What an amazing and insightful panel. Thank you so much, guys. One more round of applause for these leaders. So next up, guys, we have a panel on data and privacy, navigating the new frontiers for indies. It's divided into two parts. The first part's going to be an overview of the impending privacy and AI reforms and what that means to the independent sector. And then there's going to be an amazing fireside chat with the great Gai Leroy, who's going to be joining us as well from the IAB. So leading this is the leader in the field of data and privacy, Mr. Shannon Fitzpatrick from FMA. He's a AI certified governance manager and a certified privacy manager as well. Can I introduce Shannon Fitzpatrick?
Thank you, Sam, and the IMAA team. It's an absolute privilege to be here and talk to you about privacy and AI and data reform. FMA is an independent consultant, so thank you to the IMAA supporting Indie-Pendence as well. It's an exciting time, especially listening to those CEOs and following them. It's great changes, I guess, upon us all now. And we're seeing the utility of data hit light speed with AI. New offerings and capabilities daily, it's hard to keep up. As a result, we're also seeing growing concerns about data. Breaches, identity theft, and AI tech posing new risks and harms, without naming any names. The Australian government has recognised protection is needed, starting the process of updating the Privacy Act to help make it fit for purpose in the new digital age. Today, we're going to be looking at consumer concerns, what's driving the Privacy Act, the timeline of the reform, the first tranche, what's in it, the OIC guidelines in pixels and commercial use of AI, 2025, looking in the crystal ball of what's next, and also some takeaways for indies. Then I'm going to be joined on stage by Gai Leroy, who will be having a chat to me about the reform and what do indies need to know. Interesting, the IAB in the US has actually just published a report on consumers' key concerns with data. Although US, there are inferences that obviously can be drawn upon here in Oz. Top of mind concerns were 8% of people were concerned for data being used for criminal and malicious purposes, 6% being hacked, 6% concerned with the use of sensitive data, 3% not being informed about how their data is actually being used, and only 2% were concerned about being for personal advertising. It seems that consumers are more concerned about the active threats rather than the ads. They just want to feel that their data is safe and they're not actually being scammed. Also, they want to understand that protections are in place to prevent this. Like my music tastes, the old Privacy Act really hasn't moved on from the 80s. Last year, we finally saw the reform gain major momentum with the first bill passing through both houses in November. We are now awaiting the second tranche to hit, maybe this year, but it is actually an election year, so who knows. So what's in this round one tranche bill Privacy Act? Well, there's laws on data handling, so disclosing the use of AI in decision making. There's laws around overseas data flows. Tracking pixels and AI systems are now under the microscope, plus new OIC enforcement powers, plus codes and guidelines, plus a statutory tort with new criminal laws for the invasion of privacy and anti-doxing. Doxing is obviously stealing the one's identity for malicious intent. Tracking pixels are the ones that are first up to bat. The key call-outs, I guess, for your pixels is you need to do regular audits to ensure compliance. Only collect what's actually needed. Explicit consent now is needed for any sensitive information you're actually collecting. It's only to be used for its primary purpose and it needs to be used for its primary purpose and also its permissible second purpose. If it's going overseas, you need to make sure it complies with the Australian privacy principles. And you need straightforward opt-out processes. Being in breach also carries a fine of $330,000 or up to, which I'm sure would be a nice surprise for your clients. There's also guidelines in relation to commercial AI systems, with the main call-outs being privacy law is now applicable for any PI that you're actually putting into the AI systems. businesses must update their policies, and they need to be transparent with the use of AI. So if you've actually got a chatbot on your site, you need to be upfront that the customer is actually speaking to a chatbot. Like pixels, there is also heavy fines too. Round 2 of the reform, the timeline is still undecided, as mentioned, but it's really not time to be idle. Key areas that have been flagged and to be working towards include expanding definitions of PI, or personal information, and the inclusion of IP addresses will be you can't use IP addresses, potentially. The right to opt out of targeting, sensitive information excluded from targeting, fair and reasonable applied to data use, otherwise does it pass the pub test, defining consent to eliminate uncertainties, plus maximum and minimum periods that you actually can hold on to PI. This is just the beginning. So there's a lot, obviously, to get through with this Privacy Act in 5 minutes, but I guess some key takeaways for the indies to have a think about is, first one, audit your third-party pixels and your technology. Check compliance against the Australian privacy principles, and think about looking into global standards like ISO. Consent, if you haven't actually already moved to explicit consent, really start thinking about it. There's also consent management tools that could be useful. Privacy by design. Train up your teams and become privacy pros, or get in a subject matter expert. Privacy as a competitive edge. Think about how privacy can actually differentiate your agency. Now, I would absolutely like to welcome Gai Leroy up on stage with me to have a chat about all of this.
Thank you, Shannon. Hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone. We don't have as many chairs as the previous panel, Gai, do we? So
Hey, you need your notes somewhere?
No.
You're right.
Okay, well, Gai, obviously, privacy and AI is really, a hot topic at the moment. I guess from the IAB's perspective, they've been in consultation with the government for some time now. Could you maybe talk us through, I guess, how you're finding that, the challenges, and what's looking promising there?
Yeah, you mentioned the timing. I guess the timing is tricky of change of government. So the privacy reform is a bipartisan initiative, so we will see something post-election. Timing is tricky. We've seen in that first tranche some of the higher harm areas that the government's going after first. So the Children's Code, which will sort of sit alongside the Online Safety Code as well, so that privacy and safety of children, and that's a bit of a global move at the moment. There's a lot of movement in that space. So if anyone's got clients who are, possibly, targeting children in any, obvious or inobvious ways, working with platforms, etc., just something to think about. The infringement piece is really interesting. So the OIC, who do a lot of heavy lifting once something's decided by the government of what it's like to do, they are speeding up infringement notices, compliance area. So in the past, when we think about, you see the big Bunnings cases, the big cases, there will be increasing amount of smaller organisations under the spotlight. So don't sort of think that, it's just a little company, so we're not going to be focused on. So the new Privacy Commissioner, Carly Kind, who came in last year, has been a breath of fresh air. She is very across the modern systems, have worked globally, very much in working with the industry and guiding the industry, not necessarily giving us an easy time, but helping us navigate and understand what often quite complicated legal language can mean. So Shannon, you mentioned the pixels guidance, which is up on the OIC website, and I'd recommend everyone to read that. Many of you might have seen sort of the scary headlines early in the year around pixels from social platforms. At the moment, the actual way that the social media platform pixels are not under scrutiny, but the implementation is. So that comes down to all of us on when the pixel's on a client site, how that's implemented, how the data's passed, is sort of as always in privacy, it depends if it's going to be legal or not. But definitely having a privacy commissioner with a modern look at the world. We will see who the AG and the department there. We may have to train up a whole lot of new ministerial staff on our area, but they are listening. They do want industry to succeed. So it's better than it was, is my short answer for all of that. We've also learned a lot from other markets. So if anyone was looking at reading stuff from other markets, the UK, both their regulatory bodies, so the ICO, which is on the privacy side of things, put out brilliant guidance, and it's heavy reading but not impenetrable, as well as their CMA, so their competitions authority, and so I guess that's the equivalent of our ACCC into regulators. Highly recommend keeping across what they're releasing.
The review process obviously took nearly 4 years, and Carly Kine is only, I guess, appointed last year along with the Information Commissioner too. So we can't really fault the government. They've been pretty clear around their consultation process with the industry, so I guess that's a really good thing.
Yeah, I mean, as we know, the world keeps changing. Timing, I always think, oh, it's sort of good it's delayed because, AI is now coming into play, so we're going to need to think about that. But, as we know in our industry, there's always going to be something new. But yeah, look, you can't fault them, but, I think it's a bit like the cookie situation. Everyone's sort of just keen to know what it will look like eventually so they can make plans. But if we look at the guidance of the other bits and pieces that haven't gone through yet, there is some discussion around things like PI. There's the targeting, the definition of targeting, the definition of broking. So there hopefully will be some practical outcomes that suit both consumers and industry there.
Thanks, Gabe. I mentioned obviously the slide within my deck around, I guess, consumer concerns. The IB obviously came out with this report in January this year. 80% of people were concerned around, I guess, malicious intent around their data, and only 2% were actually concerned with personal advertising. Is there a better job that we should be doing as an industry to make regulators and consumers feel more comfortable around what we do?
Always, we need to do a better job. So on two elements, I guess that security piece, because targeted advertising isn't a problem until suddenly it's a client whose data is breached in some way. So security is number one. When we talk to regulators and politicians, they jump straight to data breaches when it comes to privacy. So the more we can do to limit breaches, to have privacy-enhancing technology in terms of data, the better it will be for all of us. On that 2% of people, which was very low, I must say. I'd done a lot of trade research in my time. It was quite low. So I guess it's the harm element. So we're probably all annoyed by, seeing the same pair of shoes, the old, targeting side of things. But it's when it goes up the chain to harm that it becomes a problem. But yes, we need to do a better job, and I'm watching closely. IB in Canada are doing a campaign at the moment trying to talk directly to consumers to say, hey, ads aren't all bad. They do fund a lot of media, a lot of services, can inform you on bits and pieces, but we haven't, as an industry, explained that value exchange pretty well enough.
Indies are obviously awesome, but they're also, I guess, very nimble, and they do a lot of great work with the resources that they have. Adding privacy, compliance, all that into their bag of tricks, how are they going to compete with, I guess, the larger corporations and also, I guess, sync with their clients?
Some benefits. So definitely having teams who talk to each other, that cross-functional piece, and being close to your client. So you're more likely to understand how your clients use data than some of the, very huge, multinational, both agencies and clients who, there's all sorts of stuff going on. So that relationship, that trust, that understanding should be a huge benefit to indies. Also internally in the team, if ever anyone hasn't got a privacy officer, and that can be whoever in the team, is the most appropriate, do that now, but making sure that they're also upskilling across the team. I know some agencies are very small, but it's still really important to have that on-point person to keep up to date with what's going on. The benefit of some of the regulators speaking in human language now is a benefit to the indies. So I'll throw out some acronyms in terms of keeping across bits and pieces. First one, IAB, lots of stuff on our website. We're trying to explain what all the different terms mean. Look at the ICO, as I've mentioned, in the UK, but also the OIC, so the Privacy Commissioner in Australia. And then working with, you'll probably need to bring people in at times. This is a risk element. So bringing in consultants, bringing in legal requirements, it's something we're all going to have to do to ensure that, compliance is, we have to do as a tiny team, the same way that the indies do and your smaller clients. So, getting that external help when you need it is going to be pretty important, particularly as we heard the AI conversation. Privacy goes across so much that's changing at the moment. AI, online safety, use of data, it's across everything. So you really do need those experts looking from a holistic client level.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know, I guess, with those organisations, like if there's rules around, I guess, what they actually are putting into those generative AI tools too, because as a rule of thumb, you should never be actually entering any PI into any sort of generative AI platform, especially from a business sense. Just changing track quickly here. The industry is facing lots of challenges, signal loss, now explicit consent being required. The industry for some time, has held up that, we need to be achieving one-to-one advertising. Does that mean that we need to start to think differently around our personas?
Absolutely, and I really don't think we ever wanted to achieve one-to-one advertising, because that's not, that's bloody hard and creepy. We did want to know stuff about people that we can build, segments, personas, cohorts, and I think the loss of signals is going to hit some players more than others, both from a client and a media side of things. But building out knowledge across cohorts and segments is the way to go. So that will help both open web, along with the platforms. The AI again comes into this. So building data segments has always been a bit hit and miss. There's often good data, bad data. But the development of AI to be able to use synthetic data to actually build out models and segments that are not, you don't need individual data. You need a lot less data to build out really meaningful segments is encouraging. And I'm going to give another plug for the IB because I'm here. The transparency, you talk about transparency from an AI point of view, but from a data point of view, you probably heard me bang on at one of these events 5 or 6 years ago about data label, which, all good things happen, don't they, eventually. So it's now sort of, it's a transparency piece around what goes into a segment, how it's made, how it's defined. We're starting to see big uptick in that locally and globally. So privacy and AI, it's all those same fundamentals. It's transparency, it's governance, security, like it's moving faster, but it's the same principles that you'd be using for, data 10 years ago, hopefully.
I think the industry has always held deterministic data up as the gold standard. And I think, as an industry, we're going to have to become more comfortable with probabilistic data again. One, to get scale within our audiences and reach. And not exactly always know exactly everything about our customers, but only the information that we obviously need to be able to act.
Yeah, and that's coming through not only in targeted measurement. Previously market mix modelling was mentioned, like AI, privacy, actually working out what's worked, aggregating that at a level. Apple obviously went in very early with this, but yeah, that understanding of ROI is going to have more of that probabilistic way of looking at things.
So I guess the technology that sits behind this, PET, so privacy enhancing technology, what should the indies be looking out for when they're thinking about implementing PET technology into their media businesses? Asking all the right questions of your vendors. So there are very different types of approaches.
and very different levels of governance, clean rooms, etc. We're sort of here to herd as a cure-all, but there are different ways of implementing different types of technology. So boring answer, but, ask what you need to do, go through the industry guidance and pin that down. Encouragingly, the ICO in the UK is doing a lot of testing. IAB Tech Lab's actually launching a privacy lab where they'll be working with industry people to throw data sets in and actually just try and hack it. Can they, recreate, can it breach privacy side of things? So I think we're going to get a lot better at actually going beyond sales narrative at times. Often it's good, but you're just understanding and actually testing and what that, the risk factor is. I mean, there is always probably going to be a slight risk factor, but if it's very, very low and safe, governments will be happy, consumers will be happy, and business can still operate.
Over to the US, Trump basically blew up most of Biden's executive orders around AI. Do you foresee, any industry challenges because of, those changes that are happening within the US here in our market?
Look, I think it's going to be interesting to watch. I was listening to the conversation on DE&I before. There'll have to be impact on our market from the US side of things, but from a regulation and a governance point of view, just last week the Privacy Commissioner here signed a paper along with the UK, South Korea, France, a few other markets on agreeing on privacy, on principles of approaching AI. So I'm hoping that, that approach from other markets in the world will keep some of those guardrails. And I can't see that going away with any change of government or same government in Australia. So I think from a product point of view, the US is obviously where the big models are, the big players are, but that government, local governance piece will still be controlled locally.
I guess it's a lot to consider for the indies, but Gay, in your point of view in relation to how can the indies stay across the ever-changing and moving goalposts of privacy and that impact upon the indies business?
We've covered some of it, but upskilling, getting the right consultants in, don't be complacent, so going back and doing, I think I've mentioned this every time I've come here, data audits, pixel audits, just, keep up to date with that side of things because, that compliance piece is coming down to smaller companies. Don't see it always as a pain in the arse. It does make you think about your consumers and your customers, so try and flip it as a little bit more of an opportunity. I know that's a bit of a, cliched way of looking at things, but it is a time to stop and actually go, would someone understand how I'm using their data? That's really important to stop and think about that. And as I said, you guys are close to your clients. You've got deep relationships. You understand how they're using it. Often that primary use consumers get. What's the secondary use? Are there other usages? What would you say, Shannon? What should the indies do?
I would say that, to definitely follow some of the industry bodies, like the IAPP, the Industry Association of Privacy Professionals. They've got courses too that you can do, which I obviously am certified in privacy and AI through them. Follow, industry press and trade press. I think, definitely think about the value proposition of privacy, and the tranche one, changes, although reported about in the press were limited, they're actually pretty significant, especially around the statutory tort and the impact of those new criminal laws. I would also think about the government, and the Privacy Commissioner too has been pretty transparent in what to expect next. So before, tranche two hits, start working towards that as a model for your business. I think that's about it, Gay.
Brilliant.
Thank you for joining me on stage.
Pleasure.
And obviously a lot to go through, but if anyone wants to chat privacy during the break, happy to.
They all will.
Yeah.